We have to answer this question, and I'll try to justify this question. Friends, when you go to a doctor, what he does, doctor, see on the left hand side, he feels your pulse, isn't it? And when he feels your pulse, he can tell that, okay, you may have a fever, you may have this that problem. And during earlier times, the Ayurvedic doctor, he used to tell so many things. Not today's doctor, he depends mostly on the tests. But Ayurvedic doctor, by feeling the pulse, he could tell that what is problem with you. Similarly, when in a field, a plant doctor goes to the soil. I'm not saying a soil scientist, even a plant doctor. Plant doctor means he or she could be an entomologist, pathologist, even an agronomist or a soil scientist. He also feels the pulse of the soil. And what is the pulse of the soil? It is soil texture, isn't it? And when there is some disorder in the crop, either the crop may have turned yellow, because it could be because of nutrient deficiency, it could be because of insect pest attack, it could be because of some pathogen attack. So just by feeling the texture, he can tell something. Okay, this could be the reason. This could be the reason. So what I feel is that here comes soil physics. Even if a man from soil fertility, he comes to the field, his first task he will do is that he will feel the texture of the soil between his thumb and finger. So this is how the soil physics starts. Now, what is soil fertility? Generally, people say this soil is fertile or not. And this is a myth that if there is sufficiency of nutrients in the soil, we say it's fertile. So now I'm asking this question, what is soil fertility? Is it sufficiency of nutrients in the soil? I have put a question mark, So that means I'm not sure whether if the nutrients are sufficient and you say that the soil is fertile. Then sufficiency of microbes, somebody say, no, the nutrient transformations are to take place and microbes, they transform the nutrients in the soil. So it is very important that for a soil to be fertile, microbes should be there. Again, I have put a question mark, you see over here. Then third thing is no organic matter. Some people say the soil which is rich in organic matter, that should be fertile. So again, I have put a question mark. I'm not sure. So next question is it the availability of nutrients in the soil for best plant growth? There is difference between the sufficiency of nutrients in the soil and availability of nutrients. These are two different things. Nutrients may be there, those might not be, available. So if it is availability of nutrients, then what factors determine the availability of nutrients in the soil? Is it optimum soil moisture conditions? Yes. If you have sufficient nitrogen or any other nutrient present in the soil, but you don't have sufficient or optimum soil moisture, that means those nutrients will be of no use to plants. Plants will not be able to take up those nutrients. So then, if sufficient moisture is there, then it means it is soil physics domain. Then, optimum soil aeration? Yes, because say if there is a lot of moisture in the soil and there is no space for air to be there, and if soil aeration is not proper, do you think plants will be able to take up the nutrients? Answer will be no. So again, soil physics. Then again, there needs to be an optimum thermal regime of the soil, because microbes which transform the nutrients in the soil, those microbes, they need an optimum range of temperature to survive. So soil temperature should be optimum, and again, this is the domain of soil physics. Appropriate soil structure as well. So that is again soil physics. So there are 4 conditions which determine the availability of nutrients. Though nutrients are present in the soil, but their availability is determined by these. So what you will call this as? I will call this as soil physical fertility. Then sufficiency of nutrients, that is soil chemical fertility. Sufficiency of microbes, that is soil microbial fertility. So when we say soil fertility, generally this is myth among the agriculture scientists and even the soil scientists, that soil fertility, immediately your mind will say N, P, K, calcium, magnesium, this, that, iron, zinc. No. It is always, combination of presence of nutrients, then availability of nutrients, and for the nutrients to be available, there should be a definite environment, what we call as soil physical environment. This is how the soil physics plays a role in the availability of nutrients. So very, very important. Now, see a typical example. Can you see these slides? I'm sorry, I didn't. Everybody can see these slides?
Yeah, it's
Yes,
visible,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Am I visible? Can you see me or not?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Sir.
okay, good. So you see, this is a very common problem in Punjab. Nowadays we have wheat in the fields. During first irrigation to wheat, and generally, in Punjab, the irrigation plots are very big, more than 1 acre, even 2 acres because of laser leveling. So here is the situation. This is very important point. Please try to understand it. We have rice wheat cropping system, and after rice we have wheat in the field. It is a sandy loam field. It's 24-day-old wheat crop. Farmer has added sufficient nitrogen in the soil and he has given a heavy irrigation. And despite of that, the leaf yellowing is there. And when you are asking a soil scientist to see what has happened to the crop, he will immediately diagnose that these are typical symptoms of nitrogen deficiency. Now the question arises that farmer has added more than what we recommend, more nitrogen than what we recommend to him, because in Punjab they have a tendency to over fertilize, the fields. Water is there, nitrogen is there, then why this deficiency is there? Now the reason is, you see on the right hand side, I have shown a profile with hard layer. Because of repeated puddlings, and especially in coarse and medium textured soils like we have sandy loam, a sort of hard layer or subsurface compaction has developed at 15 to 20 centimeter depth. And during first irrigation, or when crop is around 23 or 24 days old or 21 days old, because first irrigation is recommended from 21 to 28 days after sowing. So the roots are just below, just above the hard layer, just above this hard layer. And because farmer is going for heavy irrigation, always he believes that first irrigation should be heavy irrigation, though this may not be true. But because of this hard layer, there is, the water stops at the boundary between, this 15 to 20 centimeter, or I mean, less hard layer and then compact layer. Water stops over there, leading to a temporary type of, waterlogging or flooding situation in 0 to 15 centimeter profile. And when waterlogging is there, or soil is almost saturated, that means there is no air. And when air is not there, and except rice, every plant root needs oxygen in the soil to breathe. So wheat roots, they don't have any oxygen to breathe. And even in case of human beings, if we are not able to breathe properly, we don't get energy, because by breathing we take oxygen, then oxygen burns the carbohydrates, and then we get energy. Similarly, roots also need oxygen to breathe and then take up nitrogen as well as water, because nitrogen being soluble, it is being taken in the solution form. Rather, all the nutrients are being taken in solution form. So roots, if they are not able to breathe, they cannot take up oxygen, water, and even the nitrogen or other nutrients from the soil, leading to deficiency of nitrogen. This is very common problem in Punjab. During the month of December, end of December, from mid to end, people come to PAU, they come to our plant clinic with the plants, see, sir, what has happened to my plant? And then we diagnose that this is because of the poor aeration condition. And this is typical, problem of soil physics. This is related with soil physics problem. Hard layer is there, flooding is there, aeration is not proper, plants show nitrogen deficiency, though nitrogen and water is present in the soil, but plants are not able to take up. This is best example that why soil physical fertility, or what is the importance of soil physical fertility. Now, Just you will get so many definitions. You open any book and see the definition of soil. But I'll simply these are the definitions which I wrote myself while preparing. This I didn't consult any book. So what came to my mind that it is branch of soil science which deals with soil architecture. Architecture means texture and structure, how the aggregates are formed. So it deals with soil architecture vis-a-vis optimum soil moisture, thermal regime, aeration regimes. Because these are the two factors, soil texture and soil structure, which in fact determine optimum soil moisture, thermal regime, aeration regime for best plant growth. This is one definition. Similarly, you can simple write a definition, branch of soil science which deals with physical aspects of soil with respect to soil fertility. This is what we just now discussed. Or you can simply write branch of soil science which deals with study of soil physical properties in relation to plant growth. Very simple definition. Now, what is relation between soil physics and other branches of soil? Some of you might be studying soil mineralogy and pedology. Now, when you see where we go for pedological studies, we identify a profile, we dig a profile. So many of the parameters which we identify over there, so we identify soil structure, soil texture, soil color. So all these majority of the parameters, they are related to soil physics. So when you characterize a soil, that is soil physics. Similarly, most of the mineral structures, that is the issue of again domain of soil physics. So this is how you should have a knowledge of soil physics before you go for pedological studies or mineralogical studies. Similarly, soil chemistry. Even a person who is doing research on soil chemistry, he must know the dynamics of nutrient transformations. And nutrient transformations are related with, of course, microbiology, but also with, say, if, for example, you have cation exchange capacity. So we know that cation exchange capacity is direct function of clay content. So again, soil physics. Similarly, it depends again on texture, structure of the soil, aggregation, how strong the aggregates are. You talk of biology or microbiology, then it is again the diversity and extent of soil microorganisms, soil macroorganisms, earthworms. Earthworms make burrows in the soil. I don't know whether I should say, as a soil physicist, really earthworms, they make soil fertile. Now, a man from soil chemistry or fertility, they always say that earthworms, they improve the fertility of the soil. Good. I agree with it. But at the same time, as a man of soil physics, as a man of water management, for me, the earthworms are bad, not good. You will say why? Because, earthworms, they make burrows in the soil. And those burrows, they lead to, what you call as, I forgot that word, movement of water. This is one movement is natural movement of water in the soil through pores. But when you have such channels, whether those are root channels or these channels are burrows made by microorganisms or earthworms, then there is, we call it as preferential flow of water. So if water preferentially flows out of my root zone, so I don't need these microorganisms or, earthworms. And then you talk of soil erosion and conservation. And all erosion conservation principles are based on, the principle of soil physics. Because basically, soil erosion and conservation, it's part of soil physics. So you need to study soil physics. You need to have a knowledge of soil physics. Dr. Devashish just now was telling that now the interest among the students is increasing towards soil physics. Perhaps this could be the reason that soil physics is applied in many of the sciences, not only of soil sciences, but with other sciences. For example, say plant physiology. Now, can you say that a plant physiologist, if he or she does not know that what is happening in the soil, how he can study the physiology of the plant? The best example is SPAC. We call it as soil plant atmosphere continuum. You have water over here, in the root zone in the soil. Then this water is taken up by the roots, transferred to the plant through xylem vessels. We call xylem water potential. So soil water potential, then it's converted into xylem water potential. Then this water comes to the leaves. Then it depends upon the leaf water potential, that how this water is lost through atmosphere, because this is what we call as transpiration. So transpiration not only depends upon the characteristics or what you call as pores on the leaves, or but it also depends that how water movement takes place in the soil. So ultimately it is the soil water potential which determines the availability of water to the plants, and then this water going up. So this ET of course will be a function of the soil physical environment as well. So for a plant physiologist, when he studies this plant physiology, he should have a knowledge of dynamics of water in the soil. Entomology, pathology. Now you will say how soil physics is related with entomology, pathology. Two things are there. Many insect pests and these pathogens, these are soil borne. That's why nowadays people, they have started this soilless culture, or what you call as hydroponics, because one of the point they stress upon is that when you have a soilless culture, or when you go for hydroponics, that means you are avoiding insect pests. You don't have these soil-borne pathogens as well. So this is number one. So even for an entomologist or a pathologist, the attack or the severity of insect pests or diseases, it depends upon the microenvironment in the field. And microenvironment depends upon the evaporation losses taking place. It depends upon, the soil moisture content. It depends upon the aeration status. It depends on, thermal regime of the soil. So because of that microenvironment, because that microenvironment determines the survival behavior of insect pests and pathogens. Then, tillage. Why we go for tillage? We till the soil. One of objective of the tillage is to kill these insect pests particularly. Solarization, this is a very important practice, particularly when we control nematodes. Now, what is solarization? You are basically increasing the temperature of the soil just by putting a polythene sheet over there, and because of that greenhouse effect, the soil temperature increases and many insect pests, including nematodes, they die. So it is because of the microenvironment which determines the severity of insect pests and diseases. It is because of the tillage which kills many of the insect pests, and solarization, again, a method related with soil physics. Agronomy. Yes, agronomy and soil, I know this is, I should say, inseparable if we have really the agronomists. Now, when an agronomist goes to the field, agronomy means science which dealing with management of the fields. So agronomist has to manage the field. He has to manage the crop. So first of all, when he has to till the soil, he must know the field capacity of the soil. Only then, because we always till the soil at field capacity. He should be aware that, okay, if this is the texture, this should be the field capacity. Today, if I have irrigated, depending upon the texture, after how many days the field capacity will be achieved. Similarly, in different textured soils, there is an optimum window period for tillage, and particularly in fine textured soil, this window period is very small. So an agronomist must know that, and that is again soil physics domain. Then optimum tilt for a good seed bed. He must be aware that this should be the structure, what we call as that granular and crumb type of structure, which is considered best for a very good seed bed. So agronomists should be aware of soil structure as well. Then soil mulch versus self mulch. You might be aware of this word self mulch or soil mulch. This is in fact that soil itself acts as a mulch. This is very common in Punjab, even in Haryana and UP also, that the farmers, they basically till the soil 3-4 times, then plank it so as to create a very fine layer, what you call as crumb type of structure. In fact, they do it deliberately, because once they have created that fine layer, if that fine layer gets dried up, it will prevent further evaporation of moisture from the lower layers. Lower layer means just below 5 millimeter. So this small fine layer is created, and farmer wants that it should get dried up. Once it is dried, it doesn't allow the moisture from below 5 millimeter to get evaporated. We call this as self-mulch, that soil itself acts as a mulch. And even if farmer, he delays the sowing somehow by 2, 3, 4 days, he can sow the crop because moisture is there. And just you remove with your finger that 5 mm layer, and though it is quite dry at the top, if you remove that dry layer, you will see the moist layer below, just 5, 6 mm. So this is called soil mulch, self-mulch. Agronomists should be aware of it, and this is the domain of soil physics. Then conservation tillage. Now this is very, an ornamental word nowadays, conservation tillage. Not only ornamental, I should say very important as well, because zero tillage or conservation tillage with residue retention, this is gaining ground from carbon sequestration point of view or soil fertility point of view. So again, for conservation tillage, an agronomist must be aware of the basic principles of tillage and even the soil structures, different types of soil structure. Then he should be aware of irrigation frequency and amount of irrigation per irrigation. This is again very important, because in coarse textured soil, the amount of irrigation per irrigation is high because of the residence time at the surface of the soil. That is more in coarse and medium textured soils than in fine textured soils. Then how frequently to irrigate, that again depends upon, the texture and structure of the soil. Then an agronomist also needs to be aware of the optimum soil and, air regimes. Sorry. Then salinity and sodicity management. When you have to manage the salinity, the basic principle is leaching. You leach the salts down root zone, out of root zone. Similarly for sodicity. Then leaching of nutrients. Yes, again it is related with, physical, environment of the soil, because the amount of irrigation water you have to apply, that is very important, because this may happen that if you over irrigate your fields, you are basically leading to the leaching of nutrients. Then you talk of this environmental science, very important nowadays, soil physics versus environmental science. So everybody knows that soil is an important component of water cycle. See this water cycle over here. This is a gift of nature, and sorry to say that we have disturbed this water cycle. So you have clouds, you have, rainfall. This rainfall is, if afforestation, I mean good forestation is there, then most of this rainfall is retained, the runoff is decreased. You know this, you have studied this carbon cycle. I need not explain this over here, but this is again very important carbon cycle, and soil is basically part of this carbon cycle, water cycle. Then it is a medium for tree growth, nourisher. It nourishes the trees. It's a medium of tree growth also. Then this soil physics, I'm talking of soil physics, determines the microenvironment of a unit, as we have already discussed. Then emission of methane and other greenhouse gases. This is again, it depends upon, the moisture content in the soil. If the soils are flooded, like you have rice fields, then of course we expect emission of methane. Otherwise, emission of carbon dioxide will be there. Then runoff and soil erosion, leading to siltation of reservoirs and dams. And this siltation again is because the soil erosion in the catchment areas is unabated, and most of this silt, which silt or primary particles, which get eroded from the catchment area, they find their way into the reservoirs and leading to their siltation. And most of our dams and reservoirs, they have already lost their dead storage. Eutrophication is another phenomenon. You see those ponds, village ponds. Most of these village ponds, there is problem of eutrophication, and I'm sure that you understand what is eutrophication. Again, the runoff water containing nitrates and other nutrients, it finds its way into the ponds, leading to enrichment of nutrients and particularly nitrates, which results in heavy growth of the aquatic weeds. And when aquatic weeds are there, they take up oxygen from the dissolved oxygen from the water, leading to oxygen deficiency. And when oxygen deficiency is there, there will not be any fish or other animals which actually eat that silt, and they keep the water clean. And ultimately, the water starts stinking. This is eutrophication, and this is the result of runoff taking place from the catchment areas. Then again, leaching of pesticide residues and nutrients. This is again a domain of soil physics, because most of the pesticide residues, whatever the farmers they apply, even if they spray the crop with pesticides, the residues they might get turned into some other compounds, maybe toxic, non-toxic. They ultimately find their way into the water table because they move along with water. Similarly, many nutrients. Now we have been seeing the groundwater getting enriched in nitrates. So nitrate is becoming an issue as well. And then apart from water cycle, I should say soil is an important component of carbon cycle as well. You see this carbon cycle. So you are also aware of this carbon cycle. So whatever organic matter, residues, dead animals, they ultimately become part of the soil system. And even the plant biomass, crop biomass should have been the part of soil system, but unfortunately this carbon cycle has also been disturbed, and this is how we burn whole of the crop biomass, which goes back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, which otherwise should have been sequestered into the soil, what we call as carbon sequestration. Yeah, and this carbon sequestration is very important for climate resilience. And again, this carbon sequestration, it depends upon the aggregation process or mechanism of aggregation in the soil. So once this organic carbon or humus particularly, it gets encapsulated within the soil aggregates, we say that yes, it is now sequestered. And if you go for more and more tillage, you break down these aggregates, and this carbon then is exposed. Once it is exposed, and microorganisms start acting on it, and it goes back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. So this is an important topic nowadays, that how to maintain this carbon cycle. So so those were some of the relation with other sciences. All the sciences almost, they have good relation with soil physics. Now, functions of soil which pertain to soil physics. Yes, it is a medium for plant growth, we know. It is a reservoir of water. This is somewhat which you have to believe, because we say that there is very small amount of moisture in the soil. Why it is a big reservoir? But just think that a forest area where you are not giving any irrigation, still the trees, huge trees, they survive. From where they get the water? They get the water which is stored in the soil profile. Similarly, wheat crop, you are applying irrigation after 1 month or 1.5 month interval. So during that 1.5 month, where from the water comes? That is the stored water in the soil. Just make a calculation that if you have 15% moisture content in 50 centimeter, 50 centimeter, 1 hectare of land, how much water is held in the soil? So it will be in, millions of cubic meters. This water will come out to be. So it is a huge reservoir of water. That is why this water cycle goes. This water gets evaporated, and if plants are there, it gets transpirated. So evapotranspiration is there, then this water goes up, gets condensed into the clouds. Then the clouds, when they come down because of their weight, then temperature, as they come down, temperature increases. So you have rainfall, and this is how the cycle goes. Of course, I know that this cycle has been disturbed. That's why we don't have the rains. What these rains used to be there earlier. Now we don't have. We have very high, high intensity storms, but for very short duration. So this is because we have disturbed the world. But anyhow, so soil is a great reservoir of water. Then this is important component of water cycle. We have already seen. The groundwater recharge depends upon, the physical environment of the soil. How, whatever the rains are there, when this rainwater, it infiltrates into the soil, how fast it moves down, how, whether if there is a hard layer of, if there is change in the soil texture, you have a 2-layer or 3-layer system, particularly in, our alluvial soils. So this movement again depends upon, the profile conditions, and particularly the physical conditions of the profile, texture, and structure. So if the physical conditions are good for the movement of water, you have macroporosity, then maybe the rainwater, if rain is has happened today, maybe after 10 days, the same rain joins groundwater. But on the other hand, it may not join the groundwater maybe for months together. Then soil is a natural filter, because rainwater is there, runoff is also there. So most of the sediment, I should not sediments, dissolved, impurities in the water, they get filtered because soil is a natural filter provided to us by the God. So when this water, it is, polluted with the impurities, when it joins groundwater, it is as good water as fit for drinking. Then soil mulch, self-mulch, we have already discussed, very important phenomenon. And especially, let me give you an example. This is one that during the sowing of crop and what the farmers in dryland areas do. At the end of the summer season crop, kharif season crop, mostly it is maize. When they harvest that crop, the soil profile is having sufficient moisture. During evening time, they immediately go there and they till the soil, leaving big clods over there. Then in the morning, early morning hours, they come back and plant the soil. So they repeat this 4 to 5 times. Again during evening hours, they'll come and plow the soil. Then again in the morning, they will plant it. So the idea is that during evening hours, they till the soil, they open up the soil, they create, they increase the surface area. Because when you till the soil, you're increasing the surface area, and more the surface area, more will be the absorption of moisture from the atmosphere during the night hours. You have dew, that dew may fall over there, and higher the surface area, more will be the catch of that dew. So in the evening, the farmer comes and planks it. Plank means he has buried that moisture. Of soil at the surface. And he says this, that he has buried moisture in the soil. In Punjabi, they call it as gil dabna. Gil means moisture. Dabna means to bury. So they bury the moisture in the soil. And when there is optimum time of sowing for wheat crop, they just, because they don't have any irrigation facility. So they simply come and because they know that they have already stored moisture, they have buried moisture due to the soil mulch or self mulch. So the crop germinates and they get benefit of it. Then again, movement of water in and out of the reservoir. This is very important that this rhizosphere, in fact, is different for different crops, depending upon, the depth of root penetration. For example, if I say rice, for the rice, the rhizosphere may not be more than 30-40 centimeters. But for wheat, it will be more than 5-6 feet because the rice roots go very deep. So any movement of water in the reservoir, out of the reservoir, that is of very important when we study water balance of different crops. Then continuing with the functions, field microenvironment. I told you that microenvironment of the field, that is very important for the good stand of the crop. The insect pest, disease attack, it will be more if the environment, microenvironment of the field is humid. And generally it has been seen in Punjab that whenever we have a wet season, summer wet season, and rice crop is mainly there, the yields are bit lower. During wet season, when we have very good rains, the yields are a bit lower compared to when the rains are below normal. This is a very general phenomenon because we have assured irrigation with us. So the yield is not affected whether or not rain is there or not, because we can apply irrigation as and when we want. But despite of that, during very wet conditions, the yields are a bit lower than the dry seasons. So we have very good high yields when the rainy season is below normal. So that is why I say that field microenvironment, and that again depends on evaporation, and evaporation again depends upon the moisture condition of the soil, texture of the soil, structure of the soil, all these things. So ultimately soil physics. Habitat, yes. Soil is very important habitat for microorganisms. They generally say you take a handful of soil and there may be millions, billions of, microorganisms, that handful of soil. Insect pests, particularly even pathogens. Yes, they are sorbed. Even burrowing animals, you have many burrowing animals starting from earthworms, rodents, and other animals living in the soil, and they affect physical environment both positively and negatively. Carbon sequestration, soil is considered to be a very good sink for this carbon. And the best, if you study carbon cycle, nature has provided very good phenomenon that, okay, plants, they capture the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, convert it into biomass, and then that biomass, in fact, should have been part of the soil. But unfortunately, we don't have now time nowadays. We don't try to mix this, crop residues into the soil. The easy way out is to burn, and the biomass, which in fact should have been there in the soil maybe for 6 months or 1 year, or should have become part of the soil organic matter, that is again thrown back into the atmosphere within hours. Within hours you burn everything. And in Punjab, let me tell you, we are burning around 16 million tons of rice residue alone. This is a huge, biomass being burnt into the soil. And many people say that this is how the air of Delhi also gets polluted because of the smoke coming from Punjab and Haryana. To some extent, it may be true, but anyhow, this is a point of debate. I don't want to go into that. Then heat penetration. This is, very important phenomenon. Let me tell you a best example that if you have observed a tube well water or a simply hand pump water, during winter season, this groundwater seems to be a bit, warm. And on the other hand, during summer season, it seems to be, colder. What is this reason that during summers it becomes colder and during winter it becomes, warmer? In fact, the water which you're extracting from the ground, it is neither warmer nor colder. It has the same temperature throughout. Because in outside world, in the atmosphere, you have a diurnal, variation. You have temperature in the morning, it is low, then slowly rising, going to the peak, maybe around 1 or 2 p.m., then again decreasing. And this is how this diurnal cycle goes on. Similarly, in 5 centimeter depth, at 5 centimeter depth, we have a diurnal cycle. At 10 centimeter, we again have a diurnal cycle. I'll give you this example just now. I have a good detailed study over here. So this is how heat penetrates. But after a certain depth, that is 50 centimeter depth in our soils, we have seen that there is no more penetration of heat. So generally this water we are extracting, it is below 50 or 100 centimeter. So this water, it has the temperature same throughout. But when outside the temperature, in the atmosphere, it is winter season, you feel this water to be warm. And during summer season, you feel this water to be, colder. Otherwise, it is not. So I'll come back to this point. Now, some interesting observations with respect to soil physics. Let me ask you a question. Can you identify a texture of a field without touching it? This is a question I generally ask to many people, whether those are students or candidates for assistant professors or even promotion for professor level teachers. Can you identify a field for its texture? I'll be happy if
Yeah, I think there is some issue with him there. Some connection issue.